Today I'd like to tell you about Robin Miller. A lot of you would know her or know of her. Some of you would have come across her in her flying career. What I intend to do is to talk about her and the family, and then talk about her escapades as a flying doctor nurse working for the Royal Flying Doctor Service. She became a noted nurse and aviator, and of course she grew up with aviation all around her. Her father founded Robinson Miller Aviation in Western Australia here, and was highly regarded right throughout Australia for running one of the best airlines in Australia. We'll talk more about him later on. Her mother, Dame Mary Durack, and she came from the famous Durack family in the Kimberley district of Western Australia, and we'll talk more about her later on. There's a photo of the Miller family. There were two sons as well, don't get much of a mention, but there's Robin as a 12-year-old, Mary the mother sitting down, Patsy, Julie, and the youngest, Mari Rose, and of course there's Horry. So that's pretty much the family apart from the two sons. It's worthwhile noting that Horry Miller had a connection with the earliest days of aviation. He went to England in 1913 and worked for Sopwith. He was in the construction game, building aeroplanes and aeroplane components. He went after three of his mates, three Harrys: Harry Cowper, Harry Hawker, and Harry Forgotten. All of them ended up in the aviation business. Horry actually witnessed Harry Hawker put an aircraft purposely into a spin, and for the first time ever to recover from the spin. Horry was one of the first people to shake him by the hand after he'd achieved it. Horry got his name in the paper in Western Australia when he won the Centenary Air Race, Sydney to Perth, 1929, in a DH9. There's a DH9 in the projection. Over east, he got into commercial aviation. Before he went to England, he was working for a motor company which provided transport, and he dropped that format over aeroplanes and started to run a service for ferrying people around, as you might say, commercial aviation. He needed to expand and needed money, so he went to McPherson Robinson, who was the chocolate king in Australia in those days. McPherson Robinson gave him enough money to buy an aircraft like that one there, a DH-61, and it was called Old Gold, which was the name of the chocolate that they were famous for producing. And the first flight of that aircraft was one loaded with Old Gold chocolate. And so, as time went on, Horry developed his business, and when it came time for Norman Brearley re-tender for the Northwest service in Western Australia, Horry decided that he would put in a tender as well. So it was 1934 that McRobinson and Miller put in this tender, and much to Norman Brearley's surprise and disgust, McRobinson and Miller won the tender. Norman put on a great show to try and say that they wouldn't know what to do, they wouldn't be able to handle it. He was the man who knew all about it, but the government said no, fair enough tender, and they've won it, and we're going to let them have it. Horry purchased three aircraft, three DH-84 Dragons, and got the mail service going. It wasn't easy, he really did have problems, but he was experienced in aviation and in dealing with people, and he eventually made a success of it. That's what it was like in the early days out there. No terminals, people would sit under a tarpaulin and wait for the aircraft to arrive, and that was regarded as a pretty good deal. I guess that the buildings on the right there are to do with toilets, and the only thing that that's what they'd be there for. Of course, 1934, Horry got 5 years of hard work, and then came World War II, and by 1942 the Japanese had come in and attacked Broome and upset things enormously. And of course McRobinson Miller Aviation suffered because of this. It also happened that the government had impressed aircraft that were in the district in the northern part of Western Australia, and anyone who had a flying licence was more than likely dragged into the Royal Australian Air Force. And so things were pretty tight up there. Post-war, Horry bought a Wackett aircraft. By this time, MMA was back on its feet. His children in Perth could travel north to where he spent a fair bit of time. They could travel in their dad's airline, and once they got up there, they'd be able to go for a fly with their dad. And of course, Robin was involved in this as a young girl, and that's where she got her first flying lessons. Robin's mother became Dame Mary Durack. Probably her most famous book was Kings in Grass Castles, but she was no stranger to writing. She wrote many books, and these are a few of them. And the one on the right there, Sons in the Saddle, in fact is a sequel to Kings of Grass Castles. There's another one there, about number 5 on the list, The Rock and the Sand, a really good read. If you're looking for something to do over Christmas, maybe you should go to the library and get some Dame Mary Durack books out, particularly starting with the ones I've mentioned. That's a photo of Mary there and her younger sister, who's by far bigger than her, and their father. Their father was MP Durack. He was the son of Patsy Durack, who came across from Queensland. He drove his cattle across the top of Australia and set up the first go at the cattle industry in the Kimberleys. Argyle Downs was the station that he set up. Still quite famous, but it's suffered over the years, which we'll talk about. MP Durack, that's what their father was known as. He became a state politician and spent a lot of time in Perth. And so the girls lived in Perth. They lived on Argyle Downs. They dropped into Broome to see their father, etc. And so they spent a lot of time moving around. It was unfortunate that the Argyle Downs station ended up in the middle of the Ord River Dam. And so in 1972, when the war was finished and the dam started to fill with water, it overfilled the Argyle property, and it also, that's the dam wall, that's Argyle Downs, and the family had also set up Ivanhoe Station. At one time, the two girls, Mary and Elizabeth, actually ran Ivanhoe, and that's where they got to know the Aborigines that worked on the station and the Aborigines in the district. And the book, The Rock and the Sand, is based on their experience on Ivanhoe Station. It's a great read for an understanding of how the pastoralists got on with the Aborigines. So that's what happened to the countryside where Argyle Downside was. The homestead, being a historic one, was moved to a new location, so that can be visited today. When Mary's father, MP Durack, or Robert Miller's grandfather, was in Perth, he lived in Adelaide Terrace, the last house coming up from down the causeway end. 263 Adelaide Terrace was the number. A 2-storey house, which he lived in for a fair bit of the time, because being a politician he had to spend a fair bit of time in Perth. Just so happened that his block was rather large, the house didn't cover it all, and there was room in the back for a man called Norman Brindley to build his hangar. really had started his operation at Belmont Racecourse, and that was a bit far out of town for him. And so he operated out of the Wacker Ground, out of Claremont Showground, and a few other places, football grounds. But he wanted to get to the centre of the city where he could get more sales, more people in his aircraft, make a few more dollars. And so he approached MP Durack, and MP said, yes, you can build your hangar there. So really built a couple of sheds. There's the Durack house, two-storey outfit, facing Adelaide Terrace. This photo is taken looking towards the north. And those trees there are those in Victoria Avenue, still pretty large trees in Victoria Avenue. And so that's the introduction to the family, and all of that was in the background as Robin was growing up. She didn't really stand a chance. There was aeroplanes everywhere. People were talking aeroplanes, people were talking outback stations and so on. And by the time she got to, let's say, a mature age, you couldn't blame her for wanting to be a pilot and get into the outback. Robin looked towards a career in aviation, but in late 1950s there was little chance for females in the commercial aviation scene, and so she took up nursing. She did her initial training at Royal Perth Hospital, finishing in 1962. She then went straight into midwifery at King Edward Memorial Hospital. There is a section of their museum at King Edward Memorial dedicated to Robin. She left King Edward when she was qualified and worked at St Anne's for a short time. It was then that she decided she needed to be closer to aviation, so she got a job as a surgery nurse for Dr. Harold Dix. Harold Dix had been president of the Royal Flying Doctor Service in Western Australia for quite some number of years. And I remember going to 285 St George's Terrace, Marble Up House, where his office was, walking up the stairs to get to his office, and people used to jokingly say, if you went for a medical with Harold Dix, he'd ask you if you walked up the stairs, and if you said yes, he said, well, you must be right if you ran up the stairs. It wasn't really like that, but that's what the story was. So there he was, and he was also, as I mentioned, the approved medical examiner for pilots and president of the Royal Flying Doctor Service. Dix had qualified as a pilot much earlier on, and he also got a basic engineering ticket at the same time while he was studying medicine. And so this gave him a chance to service the aircraft that he flew. So he had more than an average hand in the way that he operated. In 1939, he became the only doctor north of Carnarvon. As I mentioned before, aircraft had been impressed by the government, pilots had been impressed by the RAF. Aviation and medicine was rather thinly spread out on the ground, and Harold Dix became a man central to the operation of the government. That was the aircraft he flew, USJ. Anyone remember USJ? It was in a hangar out here, perfectly restored, and got sold to elsewhere. Harold Dix became the government's representative in pretty well all of those positions. Medical officer, acting magistrate, mining warden, quarantine officer, etc. And so he became very well known throughout the Northwest, a very obliging character. Robin, while she was doing her nursing training, decided that she would take up flying, and she started at the Royal Aero Club at Guildford Airport. And the first aircraft she flew was a Chipmunk. She finished her private licence in 1963 at Perth Airport while the Royal Aero Club was stationed there. That's where the Aero Club office was, there, and the Aero Club had rights to the ANA hangar because the new terminal had just been built and A&A had moved around the corner. So the Aero Club took over temporarily those buildings while Jandakot was being built. And so Robin finished off her commercial licence at Jandakot. She did her final night flying test out of Jandakot here. On that same night, a couple of other people did their last flight test for commercial licence. One of the others was Harry O'Neill, and the third person to complete the night flying on that night was Brian Hernan. There were three very happy people in the Aero Club office that night. In 1966, the polio epidemic was pretty much all over Western Australia. It was causing problems. Salk vaccine was administered by vaccination. The new one arrived, and that was the Sabin. It was a syrup, and it could be administered by pouring it onto a sugar cube and make it rather delightful to taste. Robin saw the need in the outback for this. There was a chance that the Sabin vaccine could be distributed in the outback, whereas the needles for the other alternative was rather difficult to manage. And so she had negotiations with the Commissioner of Health in WA here, and negotiating that she could deliver as a nurse the Sabin vaccine to mining camps, settlements, outback places, country towns. And so that was the plan. She would cover the state. That was about 50% of the state. It involved administering 37,000 doses. The Aborigine children had trouble saying sugar, and they used to use a word like sugar. And so she became known in the outback as the Sugarbird lady. She needed an aircraft to get around, so she bought herself a 182, 1967. That didn't last long because she felt that she could do better if she bought another type of aircraft. And she bought a Mooney, the Super M20. The Mooney was faster, but used no more fuel than the 182. And Robin had contracted with the government to be paid at a rate of 2 shillings or 20 cents per mile. And so the aircraft that she chose, the Super Mooney, was going to be a much better deal for her. She had cleaned herself out as far as finances went, and she was relying on her father to help out a little bit as well. So she reckoned it was the poorest days of her life. That's the Mooney. Robin was meticulous about the condition of the aircraft. She'd polish the inside and the outside, do whatever service she could to keep it in good operating order and to make it look nice. The conditions under which she worked were at times horrendous. There is a photograph of her operating in the outback on a couple of tea boxes with a line-up of Aborigines, all lining up for their sugar and the syrup. She became involved in other things, and she was doing eye examinations on Aboriginal children. She was also looking after injuries and illnesses, and quite often having to fly people who were injured to the nearest centre or hospital. And so her work with the Royal Flying Doctor Service overlapped quite a lot. She also had flown on clinics with Dr. Dix. He would be called out to go to certain remote places, and he would say, "I need a bit of a hand, could you come along?" And so she did a fair bit of outback work with Dr. Dix. But while she was working on the polio effort, the wet arrived, and the runways that she was using were mainly gravel. They got very wet and boggy, so her work was quite restricted. So Dr. Dix said to her, "Well, listen, we've got an aeroplane to pick up in the United States. Would you like to come with me? And we'll fly it back to Australia." And she said, "Well, I'm not doing very much. I'll be with you. They flew a Baron aircraft across the Pacific Ocean. The next year, during the wet, Dr. Dix discovered that there was a company in Western Australia that wanted 2 aircraft delivered from France, 2 Sud Horizons. They were slightly different models but travelled roughly at the same speed. So it was arranged that Robin would fly one and Harold Dix would fly the other. And so they came via the Middle East and it took them 21 days. It was a rather long, harrowing journey where they came across bureaucratic brick walls that slowed them down immensely. And eventually they got back to WA, and one of the happiest calls she ever made on the radio was when she was coming in, I think, to Port Hedland, or was it Wyndham, one or the other. She made a radio call saying that they were on their way. In 1973, the Zonta Club of Perth was trying to raise some money, and they looked at raising it by lifting the profile of women pilots. And that was where she joined with Rosemary DiPierre, who was from a farming background. The two of them got together with the support of Zonta and with the support of the Wool Board of Australia, who made them both those uniforms in nice wool. So they went to America, competed in the Derby and ran 6th out of 36. They had problems when they got there, and you may remember Jack Fletcher, the late Jack Fletcher, who used to come along here. His wife was in the Zonta Club, and he arranged for assistance for the pair of girls in the United States through some of his friends. So they had problems, but Jack helped out. Harold had also decided that at the end of the race, after they tidied up, that they should deliver a Duke, a pressurised aircraft, for the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and it was to be delivered from America to WA, and it would be via the Middle East again. In all, the pair of them delivered 9 aircraft from America to WA for the Royal Flying Doctor Service. They became old hands at delivery. There's a couple of the aircraft. The one on the left is the Baron, and the one on the right is the Duke, and there were better aircraft to come. It had to happen. Robin and Harold were married in 1973 in a quiet ceremony in Canberra. They didn't want to have all their friends around. They wanted to be on their own, pretty much on their own. So here's a series of photographs of Robin. First of all with the Mooney aircraft, then there's her with the Baron, and then there's her with the patient in Port Hedland. Eventually, Robin had ended up as an RFDS pilot employed by the RFDS. You can say that came as no surprise because she was angling at it the whole time. There's a photo of her at the wing locker of a Cessna 421, and there's her getting into a Cessna citation. Robin wrote a book called Flying Nurse. It's a good read. Robin kept diary. Whenever she had a spare moment, she would jot down what had happened throughout the day, and her diaries described what people said, how it was said, whether it was a happy situation or sad. And so she got these diaries together and produced a book. It was a great seller, published in 1971. In 1975, Robin died, passed away at the age of 35, one day short of her 35th birthday. But in the meantime, she'd written her name into the history book. She'd already started on a second book. It didn't have a name, but it was given one, by Harold Dix. They built a house in Brentwood, not far from Jandakot Airport, and after Robin passed away, there was this part written book and her diaries. So Harold decided that he would finish it off for her. And when he finished his component, he passed it over to Mary Durack, who was still alive, and she added her bit to the book as well. Didn't change anything apart from a little bit of editing. And so it's, once again, a good read. Harold Dix decided that Robin's contribution to aviation and to nursing and to medicine in Western Australia needed a memorial, so he arranged for a Mooney to be brought to Western Australia. Robin's Mooney had been on-sold a number of times, it had been framed a number of times and had been written off completely. So Harold Dix arranged for a similar model to be brought to WA, refurbished to a degree and painted in exactly the same colours as hers. And that's the Governor of Western Australia dedicating the memorial with over 300 people in attendance. The aircraft looked very nice in colour. There was a memorial stone underneath. We've already talked about this, that in 1913 corrosion got into the whole show and the Mooney fell down, and so Harold Dix, the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and quite a number of helpers put their efforts together to obtain another Mooney, which was refurbished to look good and painted in the right colours and put back up on the stand. During her lifetime, Robin was awarded with the diploma. You can read that out with the association from Italy. She won the Nancy Bird Award for Women Aviators and posthumously awarded the Paul Tissard Diploma and the Brothers and Cut. And so that's how things ended up.